is Team Junior Paranormal Events, and we're thrilled to have with us this evening Penny Griffiths-Morgan, who's joined us for a special Q&A session. So yay! Thanks so much for joining us, Penny. So Penny is actually the author of 4 books, and she's got a 5th one underway, and also writes occasionally for Haunted Magazine, has been a guest on Help My House is Haunted as the historian, mum, financial advisor that we found out before, does lots of other things, wears lots of different hats, but we're absolutely thrilled to have her join us today because we think Penny's got a really lovely perspective on the paranormal, and we want to share it with all our budding junior paranormal investigators. So we're going to jump straight into the questions, Penny, because we've got so many. We do have 3 of our junior paranormal ambassadors with us. So we've got Finley, Olivia, and we've got Aubrey, and we will hopefully have Harrison popping in very, very soon. So Aubrey is actually going to get us started with the first question. Off you go, Aubrey.
So my teacher told me that the paranormal isn't a proper career. What do you think about that?
I did see Gemma did give me warning on some of the questions, and that one did make me chuckle because I kind of see where the teacher's coming from, but I also think it's a kind of a throwaway comment, if that makes sense, that she made, so, or he made. I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman, or whatever they are. So I would say being a paranormal investigator probably isn't a full-time job, because most people go in and do investigations for free, wouldn't they? So if someone's house was haunted and you're a professional investigator to go in and either try and clear the house or work out what's going on, most people don't charge, so you can't sort of pay your rent or buy your food with that. But what you could do is have a career in the paranormal field by becoming an expert in something. So whether you're like someone like Jane Harris, you heard of Jane Harris, who does Help My House is Haunted, runs HD Paranormal. Well, she works full-time in the paranormal field, but she has lots of sort of her fingers in lots of different pies. So she's got the television work, she's written books, she does personal appearances, she has her own herbalist company, she has her event company, and so she's in the field but doesn't just work as an investigator. So my answer to that is your teacher is kind of right, but also there is a way of doing it. But I would say no, just what they probably think is, you know, it's just going to be like Ghostbusters. That's all you're going to do. So they don't realise how big the field is. You could be a writer, you could run your own events company, you could be a specialist photographer, for example. There's people who are specialist photographers who specialise in photographing paranormal things, or filmmakers, or there's so many different jobs within the field that you could do to be in the field. So that would be my answer to that one. Does that help at all? Yeah.
A good answer? Yeah, that was a good answer. Thank you very much. Olivia, I'm going to come over to you now. Can you ask Penny your first question?
What's the most interesting paranormal experience you've ever had?
This is going to sound like I'm copping out. I find them all fascinating, from the smallest to the biggest. The two that probably, I've got 2 that really come to mind. One of them was, I investigated a place called Highlands House in Chelmsford, and there's the history bit for you here. During World War II, that was the headquarters for the SAS, that at the time were known as L Detachment Special Air Service, and that was their headquarters. When I was there, and I was there with an event group because it was like a public investigation, we were using, I can't remember what device it was. I think it was like Echovox or something like that. One of the words, sort of the spoken generate ITC devices. And that all of us are sitting there in this one room, and it kept saying penny, corporal, corporal, penny, penny, corporal, corporal, penny. and nobody else was called Penny. And I just said, oh, do you want me to speak to you on my own? Yes. And then it cut out. Me and another friend who's also, she's actually a history teacher, A-level history teacher. We went back there using you know, the Ovilus, the word generators. Do you use anything like that?
No, we don't use them, just because we can't necessarily control the words that come out. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, that would be why I wouldn't use a spirit box with kids sometimes, because some of the stuff that comes out of that can be quite but anyway, so we're using this random word generator, and I sort of said, look, I'm back. What did you want to tell me? What's your name? And it came up with Corporal Terry Knott. Those 3 words. Carried on questioning it, and it came up with loads of information that I could actually double check. When a couple of days, I completely forgot about it, because when you're doing these things until 3-4 o'clock in the morning, you're a bit like zapped out the next day. It takes a few hours, a few days to recover, especially at my old age. And I decided to look them up, and I found a Corporal John Terence Knott, who fought in World War II, who was buried where this guy said he was buried, who was also a former Marine commando. And back then, when you join the SAS, you're loaned to them. You don't become SAS on your records, if that makes sense. You stay with the regiment, so paras or Marine commandos or whatever. And the original SAS men, most of them, and I'm not being sexist, they were men, were Marine commandos. And I also found out that the battle this chap had died in was an SAS battle. So that experience still now sends a shiver up my spine that he was communicating with me. There's too much information that I didn't have to manipulate that fit. The other one was when I was on holiday with my family. We'd gone to this gorgeous 500-year-old farmer's cottage in Normandy, in northern France, and you could feel the energy as you walked into the building. It was like it sort of whacked you in the face. And even my husband, who's about as sensitive as a brick, he turned around and he said, this place feels weird. Oh, he is, but he felt it. That's how strong it was. I mean, I just felt like I was walking through like thick fog. And about 2 or 3 nights into staying there, now we are in the middle of nowhere. There are no roads near us. We've got a dirt track to get to us, so there's nothing that's going to cause the ground to shake. None of that. There was a table. We'd been at the cottage all day because it was a beautiful day. So the boys had been playing in the garden because it was like 3/4 of an acre of land around it. It was amazing. And this bag, my son's little rucksack, had been sat on the table. And my husband turned around to me, we're sober. He turned around to me and he said, it suddenly feels really weird in here. And I had thought that because my eyes can't focus when the energy gets like that. I can't explain. It's like someone's doing that to my face. And I went, yeah, there's something not right. And as we said that, the bag flew off the table. Like either somebody had tied a wire to it and yanked it or just swept it off the table like that. It was very strange. Now this table, me being me, I went over to it, put the bag back on it. The bag had been there all day. Hadn't just been put there, and it was in the middle of the table. It didn't just fall, it flew over the room. I shook the table was fine. When I got back to the UK, I even checked for any sort of seismic, seismic activity, mini earthquakes, anything that could have caused this. Nothing else in that room moved, just this bag flew off the table. So unfortunately, I didn't get it on camera because I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't there to investigate. I was there on holiday. But those 2 are probably my most memorable things that have happened. But like I say, I'm always grateful to anything that the activity that happens, because I'm just grateful for them wanting to communicate.
Wow, thank you. Hi, Harrison. Hi, this is Penny. So Harrison, Penny, Harrison. So Harrison, we're gonna you've got 2 questions to ask Penny. So we're just taking it in turns and asking 1 question at a time. So I'm going to give you a little minute to settle in. So Finley's going to ask his first question, and then I'm going to come to you to ask your first question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Fabulous, thank you. Finley, would you like to ask your first question to Penny?
Yeah. What do you enjoy about what do you enjoy the most out of everything that you do?
I love all of it. I mean, you know, doing the television work, because I've actually filmed. Well, you'll have seen 2 episodes of Help, the House is Haunted. I've filmed 3, and I will be filming a 4th a bit later this year.
We watched the Joey Essex one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was my first ever one I did. That was the first ever one I did. I was so nervous. But they're such a great crew to work with. They're so much fun. And I've known Jane for quite a while, so it wasn't like a complete stranger, but that was an experience, that one. And I genuinely didn't know what the haunting was. All I got told was water. Just see if there's anything to do with water around here. And I came up with the story of that lady who took the life of her 2 children because she was scared that they were going to be motherless if she died from the flu. That's amazing to do. I love doing public speaking when I get to do functions and stuff, because I'm doing 2 later this year. I've got Neil Packer, who runs the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. I'm doing his Parameet at the beginning of September, and then 2 weeks later I'm doing the Festival of the Unexplained. Again, I did it last year and they've rebooked me for this year. I love doing that sort of stuff. I love writing. I mean, I don't just write occasionally for Haunted Magazine. I think I've been in every issue for the last 3 years. I'm one of their feature writers.
Oh, wow.
So always getting nagged by Paul, the editor, like, send me more. And it's like, you've got 5 already. You know, use one of them. So I love doing all that and being part of that team. I love getting to, I love the thing I love about the investigating side is we get to go into these amazing buildings and it's just us, you know, or us and anything else that's going on there. But it's not like you've got, you know, members of the public who are a bit bored and don't really want to be there and mooching around and, you know, not paying it. We get to be there and feel the atmosphere and feel the environment and explore these amazing buildings. But actually, my favourite thing out of all of it is the research. I am a research junkie. I love it. If someone says to me, what's your ideal day out? And I say, drop me off at the National Archives in Kew, and I'm a good one. So it's actually the research, because you find little amazing, like the story I told you about that soldier, the SAS soldier, doing the research to see if he actually existed, and then finding out he did. And this is like genuine records. It's not sort of something that someone's made up. That's, to me, is my favorite bit. I get lost researching. So yeah, it's the researching side of it that's probably my favorite.
Wow.
But I love all of it.
Harrison, would you like to ask Penny your first question?
What's the best place you've experienced paranormal activity?
Well, you missed the story I was telling about the cottage I stayed in Normandy, because I think you came in as I was finishing that story, and this was a sort of 500-600-year-old farmer's cottage where the bag flying off the table wasn't the only thing that happened there. it was very, very active. But from a sort of investigating perspective, my favourite place, and unfortunately you can't investigate it anymore, is a place called Drakelow Tunnels near Kidderminster.
Yeah, we've heard of that. It's closed now, isn't it? Yeah,
it has. They sold it off to use, I think, as a wine cellar or something. Yeah. And there's people pay to have these many thousands of pounds worth of wine stored in there. So they only allow like mini history tours now, and you're not even allowed to go off on your own. But that place, my sort of interest in World War II history, Cold War history, because I live just up the road from Kelvedon Hatch nuclear bunker, so I've been there quite a lot. And so yeah, probably Drakelow Tunnels is one of my absolute favorites I ever did. Another one I really enjoyed doing was let me think. I also love a place called Langard Fort, which is in Felixstowe, and giving you a history fact, that was the site of the last ever seaborne invasion of England.
Wow.
And that place there's a lot going on there. I mean, there's been some kind of fortress there since Henry VIII's time. So the current building predominantly is Victorian, but there's been stuff there since Henry VIII's time, and that's probably, and you can still go there. That is open. It's an investigating, say, Felixstowe over on the, it's bang opposite the docks in Felixstowe. It's yeah, it's fascinating place. Fascinating place.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Right, we're going to come back to Aubrey now with her second question. Off you go.
How did you get into history? Did you study it at school?
Well, we were kind of talking about this before we started recording, weren't we? So as a young kid, whenever we went on holiday, my parents always had English Heritage and National Trust memberships, because it worked out quite cost efficient with 2 kids to just go to a castle, have it paid for on the membership, and then let the kids run around for the day on the castle ruins and tire themselves out. At the time, I hated it. And I was just like, no, I want to go to, I don't know, Lanzarote and lie on a beach. But I'm doing it with my kids too. I get why my parents did it now. Fortunately, my kids are starting to appreciate it a bit more because I can bring it to life for them wherever we are. I can tell them some of the gory tales of the place and, you know, who lived here and, oh, wow, he lived here, did he? And all that kind of thing. I would say my love of history started, I was when I went to secondary school, so I would have been about 12, and it was a teacher called Phil Hancock. Mr. Hancock was my history teacher, and he was the one I was saying before was a bit odd. A lot of the kids sort of thought he was a bit of a joke, but I loved it, the energy he had and the way he explained subjects and stuff. And that's really where he started my love of history. And it's been a bit like this as I've gone through life. You know, you discover other things that take up your time, but I've always loved history documentaries. I've always enjoyed listening to historians. And it's probably in about the last 10 years, I started thinking, well, hang on, I could do this. And that's really sort of, and one of the things I wanted to do was, there's an awful lot of people who, when you mention history, they go, at you, right? And to me, the paranormal and history are so interlinked, because how great would it be for a historian if you could have a spirit from like 1820 tell you really what it was like? And so my goal when I started Haunted Histories back in 2015, 2016, I can't remember now, was to bridge the gap. So for paranormal people to realise history is actually quite cool, and for the historians to realise that not everyone who looks into the paranormal is a bit mad, you know, a bit dilally. And I've got sort of proper academic historian friends, really amazing paranormal investigator friends, and I'm kind of in the middle of them now. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to bridge the gap between the two, and because I can talk both their languages, it's starting to happen. So there you go.
Amazing. That's amazing, isn't it? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Olivia, I'm coming back to you now. Can you ask your next question?
How did you get into the paranormal, and what was your first paranormal experience?
I've kind of believed in something else since I was tiny, since I was a little kid. I remember the house where I lived in. I grew up in Norfolk. Don't know if you know where Norfolk is.
Yeah.
And the house I lived, I don't know where you're all based, so I don't say. But
we're Greater Manchester.
Okay. So I always say that Norfolk is the boil on Britain's backside. Because if you look at map of Britain,
where about in Norfolk?
Well, a little village called Ketteringham, which is actually where Lotus Formula One cars used to be based, if you know anything about motor racing. It's about 6 miles south of Norwich.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Middle of nowhere. It's a tiny little hamlet. The house we lived in was built in about the 1960s, so you know, as a kid, I'd be like, well, this house isn't old, it couldn't be haunted. But I remember vividly one time we had a glass door for our living room, and my dad used to work away. He didn't come, he'd be away for 3 or 4 months at a time. And I can remember my mum, my sister, and our dog were all sitting there in the living room, but I could see out the glass door. Now, bear in mind, we lived in the middle of nowhere. People didn't drive past our house. I mean, if you saw one car a day, that was a lot. I saw car lights, and then I saw a shadow of a person, because the door was kind of frosted glass. I saw the shadow of a person walk past the door and then heard steps up the stairs. I was about 6, 7 maybe. And because I thought, well, hey, my daddy's home. And I went running out to see him. No one there. But I heard it. I saw the shadow go up the stairs, and I heard the footsteps. That used to happen quite frequently. Even my mum admits she's heard footsteps on the landing and there's no one there. So what it is, I don't know. But the weirdest one I ever had growing up was because it was such a small village, it was very quiet. I would have been at 9 or 10. So my sister was about 6 or 7. We'd taken the dog for a walk. And we used to joke that this one building we went past was where the evil witch lived. I think I used to do it to give my sister nightmares. I used to play up to that, as you do. But there was this old barn, this really black wooden barn, derelict barn. And we used to dare each other to look inside it. Again, as you do. And I remember there was one time, so I'm looking through this crack in the door. Now, it's a summer's day. Just set the weather for you. Summer's day, there's no wind at all. Just a lovely summer's day. There's no light coming into this building at all because of the way it's constructed. And my sister and I are looking through this door, and we saw what I can only describe. I always say it looked like Tinkerbell, you know, the fairy from Peter Pan, like that glow, that weird glow. And it was flying around in this building. But it wasn't like on, like, if you know, if you see dust following on the air, it wasn't. It would fly and then dart off and then fly and it, we're sort of transfixed watching it, and it flew towards us at the door, and we couldn't move. We both of us are like trying to go, oh, but we couldn't, and it just vanished. Just vanished.
Wow.
So things like that, and I used to hear people say my name and there was no one there, and it just made me think there is something going on, but we don't understand what it is. But it never scared me. I think I never felt intimidated by it. But that's kind of how I got into it.
Do you know, I was the same. I had experiences from being young, and it was sort of 5, 6 years old. I started having things happen, but mine were family members that had passed that I would see, I would smell, I would hear my name called, and I've never, and still to this day it happens, especially around significant birthdays, anniversaries, and it doesn't frighten me whatsoever. I find it quite comforting. But what's interesting is when Aubrey was little, probably again from the age of 5, 6 years old, she started having those experiences as well. So we've been quite open about having those conversations, haven't we?
Both my boys have. Both my boys have as well. I lost my sister when she was 19. I was 22, so my kids never met her. But I still talk about her because she was part of my life. And I remember my eldest was about 2.5, possibly 3, and he didn't speak very much at that point. And I could hear him having a full-blown conversation with someone, like a two-way conversation. And I said to him, I said, who are you talking to? And he said, nice lady with red hair. And I went, okay, what? And I'm thinking, sister had red hair. And I said, what's her name? And he says, she's told me to call her Auntie Susie.
Oh.
And she's told me I've got to be good for you. And there's me sort of going, okay, I'm not going to panic because there's no need to panic. And I said to him, I said, okay, can you find a photo of her in the house? And he went straight to the photo of my sister, and he went, that was her.
That is very, very similar experience with Aubrey. When I was pregnant with Aubrey, my great auntie Pat passed away, so she never met Aubrey. And Aubrey kept on referring, when she was roughly around 2. So when she had
Hmm.
the verbal skills, she would call out to other Nana. So she calls my mum Nanny, and she would say other Nana. And I was like, there's nobody here. And she was like, yeah, she's there. And I said, show me a picture of her. And we've got one on the wall. And she went straight to it and said, that's other Nana.
I genuinely believe children, they're more open to it because they've not yet lost that magic ability. I see it an awful lot in my day job because I work with a lot of people with dementia. I see it with them as well, that they start seeing things that other people can't see. And I do wonder if something, the way the brain is affected with dementia, it cuts off, like the inhibitions side of things, because children often don't have the inhibitions.
Yeah.
But I've never, I mean, my eldest son, he's I don't know if he still hears, and I know when, I think he was 9 and we were walking in the woods in Ketteringham. Now, the other thing, that this building in Ketteringham during World War II, it was where the 2nd Air Division was based, the American Bomber Command. And I could feel someone breathing on the back of my neck as we're walking around these woods. I could feel it. There was someone behind me breathing on my neck. I didn't want to say anything because, you know, I didn't want to worry my son. He's in front of me, and he just turned around and said, "Mum, who's following you?" You know, I hadn't said anything. So I do, you know, kids, if you keep believing in it, it will keep happening.
I think so. I definitely think so. Definitely. Thank you very much. Harrison, we're coming back to you now. Would you like to ask Penny your second question?
Where's the place that you want to investigate the most?
Oh, can I give you more than one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on then.
Okay. Windsor Castle. I would love to get into Windsor Castle. I'd love to investigate Windsor Castle. Where else? And my mind's just gone completely blank where this RAF base is, but it's where Guy Gibson was based during the Dam Busters episode. My mind has gone completely blank, and I'm a massive Guy Gibson fan. Have you heard of the Dam Busters? Have any of you heard of the Dam Busters? Yeah. Well, they were these iconic pilots who flew these huge bomber aircraft called Lancasters. And I mean, these things are huge. And they had to bomb these dams in Germany, and it was precision flying. They used the bouncing bomb that was devised by a guy called Barnes Wallis. They had to get down to, I think it was about 60 feet above the water to drop them. Now, these aeroplanes were as big as passenger jets, and they're having to fly in at 200 miles an hour and dropping down to 60 feet above water to drop a bomb, and then literally pulling. They were amazing. So I'd love to investigate his old office at this RAF base, which his name has just completely escaped me. I do apologise. Where else? There's so many places. I mean, those are the two off the top of my head at the moment. But I find everywhere's interesting. Everywhere's got something. But those are the two off the top of my head.
We were having this conversation before, weren't we, Aubrey? And Aubrey said Buckingham Palace because it's super old and there's many stories.
Do you know when Buckingham Palace was built, Aubrey?
No.
The 1700s. Windsor Castle, the 1100s. Because the palace that they used to live in London wasn't Buckingham Palace. The palace they used to live in London was a place called Whitehall, which is now where like loads of government things are. And that was the palace until around the 1700s when they built Buckingham Palace.
I said the Tower of London. I'd love to get my hands on the Tower of London. Yeah, definitely. Harrison, where would you go if you could go anywhere in the world?
I'm gonna do multiple. Because
Good lad.
I've been there before because it's only just down the road from me. but I've never done an actual investigation there, and I've never gone through the whole place.
I know
It's
which
called
one.
Alton Towers.
Yeah.
Alton Towers, yeah, I know loads of people
Yeah.
who said that's really good to do.
Yeah. And then another one is Stanley Hotel in
Oh, what, in America?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Josh from Paranormal Peeps went there. He's just done an investigation there. Yeah.
He went for his birthday, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
I'm good friends with Richard Estep, and he used to be one of the guides there. I also, when I wrote one of my books, the one I did on a haunted experiment, I was looking at like the background for different types of haunted experiments, and one of the ones I looked at was the Estes method, which you may or may not have heard of, where you block out your other senses and you just got the spirit box pummeling into your ears. And I spoke to one of the inventors of the Estes method, and that was actually devised in the basement at the Stanley Hotel.
Wow. Olivia, where would you go?
Alcatraz prison.
Yeah, we said, yeah. I think we're right. Yeah, I think we all, yeah. Michael.
Well, I can tell you a spooky story about Alcatraz.
Oh,
I've never investigated it, but I visited it. I actually found it quite relaxing there. I must be a bit nuts, but I actually found it really nice. And I'd gone there to visit a friend who was living in San Francisco, and I'm sat, if you look at a picture of it, the recreation yard has got these stone steps that go up, and I'm sat just looking out across the bay thinking, yeah, I suppose this would have been quite, because you can hear, what's weird is when you're sat there, you can hear people talking across the bay. It's really strange. And I was sitting there, that probably would be quite torturous to know that life's going on without you. And he took a photo of me without me knowing. And we were talking like 20 odd years ago. And I'm just like this, sort of just looking out across the bay. Anyway, we're in the sort of the shop, and we find a picture of Al Capone sitting in exactly the same position on exactly, you might see exactly the same place doing this. It was almost the same pose. I hadn't known I was being photographed. I was just looking out across the bay. So that was a bit of a weird one, but it's a fascinating place. But say, I actually found it quite relaxing, but I'm probably a bit weird like that.
Finley, where would you go?
Water Street Station.
Water Street Station.
I've not heard of that.
Well, go on, you might as well explain the full.
Elaborate.
Go on.
Don't look at me.
You were going to say
Right.
something there.
Go on, say where it is.
It's at Saginaw, Michigan.
Oh, right. So what would make you want to go there?
Steve Shippey.
So the Aubrey and Finley really like somebody called Prozac, Steve Shippey, and he does investigations that
Right.
obviously they can watch. And I think they've liked his method of the fact that he does it's like a 6-month year project that he does on places, and then he produces it as a film
Mm-hmm.
that he then shows in the local cinema
Oh, wow.
in Saginaw. So he does it as like a film that he invites people to, and you can book tickets and stuff like that, and he presents
Wow.
it as a full-on film. But yeah, some of the stuff that he did catch in there, but it was strange to say.
Is that on YouTube? Can you
No,
watch it on-
he's you can see, I think you can see it on YouTube, but it's on is it on Prime? He has a lot of his
Right.
stuff on.
Ah, okay. Sounds interesting. You see, this is why I love doing all this. I learn stuff. You know, I learn so much talking to different people. It's brilliant.
He's very gentle in his technique.
Mhm.
As well. He's not aggressive and confrontational. He's very respectful.
He's not a Zach Baggins then.
Oh,
No.
we don't mention that name. No, he isn't. No. We have thoughts, but we're not going to share them now. But no, he's not. He's the opposite.
Good. Yeah, that's the kind of investigator. The only time I have ever got nasty with a spirit, and I'm normally really polite with them because you don't know what they've been through.
No.
The only time I got narky with one, I was at a fort in Kent, and the guide sort of said all the women were walking past one of these rooms, and every single one of them was going, oh, like they've been punched in the stomach. But none of the men, only the women. And he said that's really weird. Women always do that when they walk past this room, but the men are fine. As the investigation went on, somebody said, oh, Pen, can you come in here? We don't know what to do. And you could feel the energy. I can feel energy, if that makes sense. And I felt the energy in there. And I could feel almost like hatred coming from the corner of this room. It was really strange. And using sort of various gadgets and just gut feeling, it was a bloke. And at one point the smell came through in this room, and it was oil and sweat. It's the only way I can describe it. And the guy who was with me said, can you smell oil and sweat? I hadn't said a word to him, and we both smelled the same thing. Now, there's no reason why this fort had been decommissioned for like 80 years. There's no reason that you would have smelled that. Anyway, one thing led to another, and this guy, he'd been there during the Victorian era. He hated women because his fiance had gone off with someone else when he was serving his country, and consequently he hated all women because of that. And I kind of had a go at him and told him that it was ridiculous and that we're not all the same, that I had a husband I was faithful to, I've been with for God knows how many years at that point. He'd just picked a wrong one, and he can't attack all of us. And I got quite narky with him. And it calmed down, the energy changed. And when I went back there about 3 or 4 months later, I met the guide who'd shown us around. Now, I hadn't told him what I'd done. And I said, how's that room now? And he went, funny, nobody gets affected now. None of the women are being hit.
Wow.
So, but normally I'm polite. The only time I get aggressive if someone is hurting someone, then I might get, but I'm protective, not aggressive. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's like having that authority for the right reasons, not just going in and being
to antagonize to get an effect.
Yeah.
No, I don't agree with that.
No,
I don't agree with that with the living. I certainly don't agree with that with the dead.
No, absolutely not. Finley, would you like to ask Penny your last question?
Who is the most interesting guest that you've had on your podcast?
That's like asking me which of my children's the favourite.
You have one, but you wouldn't say.
It's the dog. Oh, crumbs. They've all been brilliant. I mean, I've been doing the podcast for like 6-7 years now. So I have had on people who've like, I mean, Nick Groff, knowing names that you'll have heard of. You'd think Nick Groff would be like, you've got 45 minutes, that's it, then you're going to go. He was so genuine. We did an hour's podcast and then talked for another 2 hours afterwards about various different theories and everything. Kieran O'Keefe, another name you might have heard of.
Yeah,
he is such a nice man. He's very busy and he does tend to stick to his timings, but he's so like giving with information. Jane Harris, she's another one. We just have such a laugh when we talk to each other because she doesn't take herself too seriously, but she's fascinating. I did one just recently with Dr. Kate Sherrill, who did the Haunted Homecomings with Jack Osborne on Discovery. She is so amazingly intelligent, but very, very funny with it. Crumbs, who else have I spoken? I mean, I just, what I'm enjoying is the fact I do get historians on as well now to talk to, not just the paranormal people. But honestly, I find every single guest I get on fascinating, because apart from I've got to learn something new to interview them, because I've got to learn some more facts. And you know what I said about I'm a research person, give me research to do and I'm away, I'm happy. It's my drug. But they're all what you see like on the television or in their articles or in their books is only a miniature amount of what they've got to say, and they're all fascinating, but some of them really surprise you. Like I say, Nick Groff, how lovely he is, surprised me. Who else have I had on? I know they say they've all been, I honestly don't think I've ever had a dodgy guest that I thought, no, I wish I hadn't spoken to you. I might have had actually, no, I have had the odd one or two, but that was a long time ago before I sort of, I would handle it a bit differently now. But I'd say 99.9% of the guests I've had on have whether they're famous or not, have been fascinating to talk to. I just
Wonderful.
appreciate them taking the time to talk to me, really.
Yeah, yeah, it's lovely. I mean, like we said, for you, we know you're incredibly busy, so it's lovely for you to take the time out to have a chat with us.
And bore everyone rigid with my love of history, yeah.
So we've asked you lots of questions. Is there anything you would like to ask us or ask our juniors?
Well, if someone's got access to the internet, can they just look up for me where the Dam Busters were based? Because it's really bugging me now what the RAF base was called.
Michael will look. Michael's on
Thank you. All right. I mean, I don't mind which of you answers this, but what do you find scary about the paranormal world?
Who wants to go? Who wants to answer that?
Before you start, RAF Scrampton.
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 Thank you.
There you
Thank
go.
you. I know
can
where
re-
it is.
You can
I just can't
relax
think what
now.
it was called. Thank you. Appreciate that. So RAF Scampton's where I'd like to investigate.
Okay.
So who finds what do you find scary in the paranormal? Who wants to go first for me?
Probably with me is that sometimes that it's just where you go into a dark place and like sometimes you get tricked with your eyes or something and like you see like black shadows for the first time, or you see something like black in your face, that and you just get jumped and scared. That's what I find scary with the paranormal, because you don't know if it's pitch black, you don't know if something's actually straight in your face looking at you.
We do talk to the juniors on events about the ways that your eyes can play tricks on you, and we do prepare them for that. But that first time when they're in somewhere and the lights goes off and it's dark,
as your eyes adjust. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things in Drakelow tunnels. There was no lights. It was pitch black. But even then, you still started to be able to make your way around and see. I think that people who have never done an investigation don't get what you mean when you say the shadow was blacker than black. It's really hard to explain to people, but the shadow was blacker than black. And it's like, how can you find something as black? No, I can't explain. It was a different black to the blackness. So yeah, but I get what you mean. It does take a while for your eyes to sort of acclimatize. Yeah.
Yeah. Harrison or Olivia, is there anything that scares you or has scared you?
I'm quite well, I've got family members that are psychic, so I'm quite open to it. But it's when when you can feel that something's a bit like, I don't know, like when you feel something that doesn't feel nice, it's a bit evil, and then you start to get that sicky feeling in your stomach, and that's what scares me. And then it's also when the equipment's going off and you get that feeling. That's what scares me.
Do you always think though that they're evil, or do you think they might be misunderstood in that they've been trying to communicate for years and years and years, and finally they've found someone who can see them, and they're just annoyed that they've been sort of talking into thin air for so long?
Yes and no. I feel like sometimes they don't like people being in their space, and that's why they'd get quite mad. But you can feel when they're mad, and it's like you want to stay away, but you also want to stay there to see what's going on.
So do you ever say to them, look, I'm not going to bother you for long, we just want to see what this is like? Do you talk to them when they feel like that?
Yeah. Say
Cool.
I come with complete respect, and
Brilliant.
I don't harm to you. I just want to learn about the paranormal.
Great. I'm impressed. Good.
Yeah, we do. Our junior ambassadors are all awesome at this. So when we're on events and we have the general public there, we have a certain way of speaking. So we say, my name is, I'm here with complete respect. We know you were here first. We just want to find out about you. And our junior ambassadors are all amazing at doing that without even being prompted.
Brilliant.
And everywhere we go, anyone who encounters our junior ambassadors are always mega impressed with that. And we always do stuff like you know, if you want us to leave, set this piece of equipment off. And then if that does, then we always say, thank you very much, we're going to leave. Call
Yeah.
it. So absolutely everything Harrison's just said there.
Well, I'm impressed. I'm impressed so far, to be honest with you all. So yeah, you're going to be great ambassadors for the future. So Olivia, does anything scare you?
I have to admit, when it comes to actually being touched, I do feel a bit like, you know. I've only been touched once, and I was like quite shook for the rest of the night. So
was that at Chandler's Hall?
yeah,
In the
I felt
seat
something
that we
touch
got?
my head. So yeah.
Funny enough, I don't mind it too much. I think I've got so used to it that yeah, I kind of.
I don't mind sort of like taps on the arm or taps on the shoulder. There's only been one time when I've really freaked out and I've not liked it, and we were at Bronny Garth, not with the Junior Paranormal events. Michael and I were there with an events company, and we were in the vagrant cells, and everybody went and stood off in their own cell, and Michael and I are standing there, and I'm gripping hold of Michael's hands because it's pitch black, and I felt a hand. It was icy cold, and it went like that up the side of my face, and I did not like that because it just felt really icky, and just and I did say several swear words.
Well, workhouses are one of my specialities. Bronny Garth is actually on my to-do list for a future book. So but because workhouses is one of my specialities, the Victorian workhouse or the 19th century workhouse. So yeah, I don't know. I mean the weirdest one I had was I was actually at RAF Tivenham, which is an old World War II bomber base where the actor James Stewart, which you probably wouldn't know who he was, he flew from there. He was a pilot. He flew over 20 missions in Liberators. Pretty amazing guy. And my nickname is the military magnet because wherever I go anywhere that's got military personnel, they come out to reason. I don't know why. And we were playing some World War II music as a trigger. I don't know if you've heard of sort of using triggers to make things happen. We were playing some we were playing some World War II type. I think it was Glenn Miller, something like that, to try and trigger the activity. And I said someone's touching my arm, and there was 3 or 4 of us there, and they saw my big thick coat. I had a handprint appear on my coat. So my arm's just like lying there like that, and this handprint appeared on my coat. I said, I told you they were touching my arm. I kind of, and my husband being him, he just turned around and said, you can dance with my wife if you wanna. So I did.
See, we did Eden Camp, and
I love that place.
We were in the music hall, the music hall.
Oh yeah, yes.
And we had like a motion detector box up at the front, and everybody sat on chairs, and it was dead quiet. I said, well, I'm going to play some music now. And as we started playing music, it was like somebody was dancing around the box, and the box was going off, and the people, they were all like, it's me moving. I'm like, well, move away then. If you think it's you, move away. Step away from it.
Eden Camp is one of my favourite museums in the UK. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
But music has been quite a bit of a trigger for us with quite a few things we've found.
It works really, really well. Finlay, have you ever been? What frightens you about the paranormal?
I don't really get frightened that much.
Loud noises.
Well, I got hooked on at Eden.
Yeah.
Loud noises. So if someone bangs something that you're not expecting.
There was a door that banged in one of the huts. Now, me being me, I was like, I think it could have been a gust of wind, would have been a choice, but the other half of the group that were in there decided that it wasn't a gust of wind and all come barreling past me to get out the other door.
I was across the other side of Eden Camp with my guests, with our wonderful volunteer Jade, and we could hear them screaming from where we were, but Michael didn't have his walkie-talkie on, so we couldn't find out what was happening. So now I always say to everyone, if you're with Michael, please make sure he's got his walkie-talkie on.
It does make me laugh when you, I'm sorry guys, but it makes me laugh when people panic. You know, it makes me laugh when they say, please do something, the spirit does something, and they go, ah!
Yeah.
It's like, no, you just ask them. I'd have a real inferiority complex if I was a spirit. In the minute you do everything, everyone screams at you. I think the funniest thing that I find is whenever I've done investigations with like mixed groups, the men are worse than the women. And I was it's true, you're laughing, but it's true. I was at the village in Mansfield, and you know, there's quite a lot of people who'd never investigated before, and it was quite a spooky place. And this bloke didn't realise that his partner had moved and was now standing behind him. And there's I think we've got like the Alice box going, so another ITC device, and my name had come up on it and all this, and I'm like, well, hey, brilliant. And all of a sudden we hear this at the top of a voice, and it's this bloke. I didn't know blokes could scream that high. This bloke, and his wife had just tapped him on the shoulder to let him know she was standing behind him. And honestly, I actually fell to my knees. I was laughing so hard.
Because it's the grown-ups who scream. The juniors who are on events don't, it's the grown-ups. And an example of that was we were at Mill Street Barracks a few weeks ago, and I was in one area of the building with my group, and we were sat on the stairs, and there was a group of parents sat on the stairs, and the juniors were up in their bedroom doing a bit, and there was a bang at the bottom of the stairs, and the parents shot up screaming, and the juniors ran past them to go and find out why.
Yeah, I never run away, I run too. I'm one of those nutters that you hear a noise in the room and I'm like, right, off we go. No, and no, we're going to go and check this out, because you've asked them to do stuff, don't be rude. Yeah, but it's yeah, I do. Yeah, sometimes the noise does make you jump, but it doesn't scare me. If you hear it when it's really quiet and then all of a sudden the REM pod goes off at the top volume and you're like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. But it's all good fun. It's all good fun. Well, I'm really impressed with you guys. I'm really impressed. Just those of you who don't like history, just promise me you'll give it a bit of a second chance when you're doing your investigations.
We know who to look at.
Yes, Olivia, I'm looking at you.
And Michael,
You don't have to write an
as
essay
well.
if you just use it when you're doing investigations.
We do try and incorporate it a little bit into our events. We're actually doing a brand new test event for us this weekend, which Olivia has been quite instrumental actually in helping make it happen. So there is a nature reserve in Rochdale, where we are in Greater Manchester, and it's called Healy Dell. Right. And at the bottom of this dell there is a tea room. Now, the history on that site goes back to having the old sort of mills from the 1800s next to the water. But then it moved on and it was used as a space to build ammunitions for World War I, and there's loads of sort of buildings around. So we're actually going to test that this weekend, hopefully, weather permitting. But that's going to be like a special event with a difference, because we're going to get to go out and explore a bit of the dell, and then the tea rooms itself is incredible. There's a spirit there called, did we find out she was called Eliza?
Yeah, it's Eliza.
Eliza, yeah, she resides in the basement area. But the owners there are lovely. They've got the most amazing sense of humour. When we first went to have a meeting with them, we were sat there having a cup of tea, and Ilango, who's one of the owners, he comes running around the corner and he goes, guys, you need to come here, quick. So we're like, what? And he said, I've just seen a ghost. So we all ran around the corner and he's pointing down the stairs of the basement, and he had a member of staff dressed up in a white sheet going, woo.
So have you checked the census records for this place to see if an Eliza ever lived there?
No, but it is on my to-do list, because we have to make an appointment to go to Touchstones, which is our local place, to go and check it. But it is my job to do some proper research into that tomorrow.
The other thing you might want to do, because again, this is an era that I've done quite a lot of work on, is look to see if the munitions factory ever blew up. Most munitions factories in the UK blew up at least once. Now, you should be able to find that newspaper reports, that kind of thing, like local history. But no, nearly every single munitions factory in the UK, some worse than others, I mean, there was one in I think it was Northern Kent, that the blast was so bad they actually heard it in France. It overpowered the noise of the war in France. But yeah, have a check to see if the munitions factory there ever blew up.
Yeah, most of the factories are like missing roofs, or obviously it's been like 100 years since they were last used, but they are like quite damaged. And there's one building that's a bit like across the river that's locked, and you literally can't get in it. It's got a metal door to it, and it's chained off. So
yeah. Well, if you get stuck, you're always welcome to drop me an email, and I'll point you in the right direction of what I would be looking for if I was researching. Because but yeah, that would be something I would look up if there was ever explosions there. They did actually deliberately destroy a lot of them afterwards so that they couldn't be used for naughty bomb building, should we say. But most of them will. I've not found one that hasn't had, because it was so dangerous what they were doing. It was so unpredictable, the stuff they were handling back, especially in the First World War. Yeah, it was not unusual. And you'd also want to look into I can't even say it now, the munitionettes that might have been based there, the women who were doing the work, because a lot of people think, and I'm lecturing you guys now, and I'm so sorry, that a lot of people think it was World War II that women started doing the men's work. It wasn't. It was actually World War One. But it was just after World War One, most of the women went back to doing their day jobs of running the families and everything else. But a lot of them, now there was an awful lot of female munition workers who died either in explosions or from the poisoning from the explosives that they were dealing with. So they were known as the Canary Girls, because the stuff they were dealing with turned their skin yellow and their hair orange. So have a look into that as well. You might find something that you can use to communicate.
Wonderful. So I've just got one last question. Is there any particular advice that you would like to pass on to not just our junior ambassadors, but any of our budding junior paranormal investigators who come on events? Is there any key advice?
Well, apart from saying don't always think history is boring, because it's quite cool, the main one is always ask questions. Always question things. If someone tells you, oh, that building there, 30 people died in it, blah blah blah, say prove it. Because what you want to be the person who turns around and shows them the truth, rather than what folklore has said. So that would be my one thing, is always ask questions. Always ask questions. And if someone doesn't want to answer your question, find someone who will.
There we go. Michael, could you stop recording?